Welcome to the October statewide meeting for Hawaii Citizens Climate Lobby. We have some great content tonight about geothermal. We're all really excited to dig into the details. We'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks for everyone for bearing with us with the Zoom details. I think we'll have some people rolling in as we start, but that's okay. We like to, at CCL, let's see. So we'll do a little bit of connection before content. We like to have a little ease us into the meeting. We'll go through some CCL values, what is our mission and policy. And then, as many of us like to say, we're going to talk about hot rocks, geothermal, and then we'll have some updates on our Hawaii chapter. What have we been up to? What are our plans for the next couple months, as well as some national updates. And always a climate action at the end. So stay until the end for our climate action. So our connection before content tonight is, what is your favorite treat? So does anybody, you can share in the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, what is a little Halloween theme for October? And this could be candy or a treat, maybe a policy treat that you're interested in.
Oh, well, I'm not going to talk about a policy treat, Ashley, but I am going to, and it's not candy, but my daughter made some classic Cold House chocolate chip cookies yesterday, and oh my gosh, she tried the first time, felt they were too doughy, made another batch, and they're perfectly delicious and chewy, and it's really hard for me to not eat more than I should.
Perfect. I had some amazing banana bread earlier today. I think banana bread on Maui is so amazing. And kudos to Doug for his homemade Rice Krispie treats last week for Drive Electric Week. Definitely attracted a lot of people to our booth. So
it must have been electrifying.
So we have 2 votes for ice cream. I'm also on board with ice cream. Dark chocolate covered macadamia nuts. That's amazing. And Helen, carbon cashback. Love it.
With sprinkles on top, right?
Yeah, you got to have the sprinkles. Okay, any other treats?
Yeah, baked pumpkin.
Ooh, baked pumpkin.
Yeah. Get a small little pumpkin, cut it in half, take out the seeds, and put it in the oven, with your nutmeg and cinnamon.
Okay, I'm going to be really boring and say my favorite treat is coconut. It still is.
Nice.
With chocolate? Or?
Yes, chocolate. Oh, dark chocolate's always fantastic with it. Anything with coconut, but coconut.
Mm.
Keith has passion fruit, so lilikoi, most definitely.
I agree with you. We have 6 lilikoi plants, and we're always looking for space for one more. So
it's a lot.
I got to get some tips on how to grow lilikoi. We had some caterpillars were all over them, so they died, unfortunately. But
well, I'm lucky. My wife's daily habit, as she walks in the front door, is to go and pick the caterpillars off of the vines every day. You don't do it, and they will just chow down and destroy it. But
yeah, they like it too. We had some beautiful butterflies flying around, but but no lilikois on our end. And spaghetti squash too, David. Nice. Awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing your favorite treat. As we continue, feel free to put more in the chat if you would like. So we can go ahead and move on. Who we are, I'm going to go ahead and throw this over to Keith to talk about our core values.
Again, we are, nonpartisan, engaged, individually and collectively for personal power, and it guards our engagement and our work. It's based on relationships and integrity.
Awesome, Virginia.
I'm going to talk about our mission, which is to create political will for a livable world by empowering individuals to experience breakthroughs and exercising their personal and political power. And here in Hawaii, we are especially focused on collaboration, because there's many groups in Hawaii that are also working toward a livable world. And so we build a lot of relationships with those groups so we can all work together and toward that.
Perfect. Next up, Paul for our policy agenda.
Yeah, so CCL has 4 different areas in terms of a policy agenda. Helen already mentioned the top one, carbon cashback or carbon fee and dividend. So putting a price on carbon and returning all the revenues back to people in equal shares. So you have a policy that both reduces emissions and is progressive, therefore helping low and moderate income families make the transition. Also, support policies to electrify buildings. Also behind healthy forests, whether rural, urban, what have you. And then clean energy permitting reform. And this touches actually 3 of these policies somewhat, maybe I'm making a bit of a stretch, relate to today's topic. In terms of, we're going to talk about geothermal. And I'm sure, Keil, there's issues you'd like to see changed in terms of current permitting. And CCL is backing kind of an overarching bill to deal with a lot of shortcomings in the current permitting process. And one of those is to put geothermal on equal footing with gas, natural gas and oil, so it's no longer at a disadvantage. And if we can get more renewables into electricity, then it makes the value of electrifying things better. And if we could get carbon pricing, that would enhance the electrification and the moving away from, moving towards clean energy.
Paul, are you referencing federal or state policy?
I'm talking about federal policy here. I mean, we as sort of what Virginia was touching on as other groups and as CCL are supporting statewide policies. But in particular, I get the right bill here, the Energy Permitting Reform Act, which passed out of, sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the committee, on the Senate side. And it incorporates a bill that has been introduced on the House side, HR 6474. But that's why CCL is pushing for this much broader bill than just this narrow bill that on the House side that only is it only addresses geothermal. And Tamara, Ashley, Noel, you can all correct me where I've misspoken here. So.
We can put the bill number in the chat. I think we'll have more work in our fall lobbying days, working at a national level to push the Permitting Reform Act. And if anyone would like to learn more or get involved, there's many different ways to get involved. And like Virginia and Keith were saying, our values really are nonpartisan. We're just pushing these topics forward. And so especially the geothermal piece would be amazing to get passed. So we can we'll get the bill and put it in the chat for this call. Tamara, anything else to add from a national level? Tamara's our regional coordinator. I'm putting her on the spot.
Nope, you didn't. Sounds great. Thanks.
She's our head honcho. I do, yes. because we do have a few people who are new, including a colleague of mine, Christy, welcome. I just want to put a spotlight on what you just mentioned, Ashley, and that is our opportunity to actually lobby. A couple times a year, we have the opportunity to engage with Congress, and that includes an event where we actually fly out to DC and meet with everybody. So it's actually a fascinating learning opportunity, and also the opportunity to make a difference, at that level of government. So I just want to call that out for the new folks on the call.
So thank you, Noel, for the update.
Yeah. And since obviously Hawaii's pretty far away from DC, we do, unlike some of the other states, we do try to prioritize having a hybrid style. So we've done that the last 2 lobby days or more potentially, and that's worked really well. So I know our representatives and senators are always really happy to see all the faces from Hawaii join in. Well, with that, we are going to move into our speaker content. We have a guest speaker today, and geothermal. And Keith, do you want to introduce Keil?
Sure, certainly. Keil Anderson is a project manager with Burns and Mcdonnell Pacific. Keil has worked several sustainability and resilience projects, and as a geothermal booster and champion, he's leading a regional interest group in the Geothermal Rising organization. And that's a little plug. Geothermal Rising will have its international conference here on the island of Hawaii in Waikoloa Beach. So welcome, Keil.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone, for having me. And to those that I haven't met before, really nice to meet you, and appreciate your time today to hear about a little passion project of mine, which is Geothermal Rising. Maybe a couple other words about myself before I kind of dig into it. So my background, I'm an electrical engineer by training, but I don't do any of that design anymore. I'm a project manager and engineering supervisor. Burns and Mcdonnell, my company, is an EPC, engineer, procure, construct company based in Kansas City. We've got 2 offices here in the state, one in downtown Honolulu, that's where I'm located, and also one in Hilo, in the old Mason's Temple building. So kind of a neat little venue there. And there's a handy bar downstairs. So personally, my interests, and part of this is maybe what brought me out here to begin with about 3 years ago, triathlons, travel, and food. So my wife and I have been living our best life for 3 years in Honolulu now, formerly of Atlanta, Georgia, and really excited and pleased to find ourselves in a little bit smaller pond, a little smaller community where maybe it's easier to make a real impact and facilitate some real change. So I really appreciate those opportunities. Burns and Mac, we're old company, been here 100 years in Hawaii, actually, doing business in Hawaii that long. But our office, we're celebrating our 11th anniversary this very week in our downtown office. We are individual and corporate members of Geothermal Rising. GR, the organization, is a nonprofit 501c3n4. Founded in 1972. It's the largest professional or trade organization serving that industry. So pretty long history there. And my company, although we are not process experts, we don't drill wells, we don't necessarily design those aspects of energy plants, we do build them, among other things. So lots of interest, both personally and professionally here as well. Geothermal Rising is a firm or is an organization that I was introduced to by Dr. Nicole Lautsy, who is one of my co-champions of the local RIG, as we call it, or Regional Interest Group. So it's like a local chapter, and these rigs are a way for GR to sort of mobilize local communities, local stakeholders to really be kind of local voices, boots on the ground, to advance the interests of the larger organization. We are open to all comers. There is no fee to be a member of the RIG. We certainly encourage you to join Geothermal Rising, but we recognize that not everybody has the means to do that, and you can absolutely contribute just by being part of the conversation and joining the RIG. So Nicole founded it just a couple of years back, but being the busy geologist that she is, was not able to kind of devote the time to all of the public outreach that it needed to really gain a foothold in the local industry community. And so I heard her speak, and I was just struck by the potential solution that geothermal energy poses to Hawaii uniquely, as a let's say an energy challenge community. And we connected, and I joined the organization. I connected with some folks back at my company headquarters, already aware, and I agreed to co-lead that rig. And we brought on to help in that efforts Peter Sternlight of Sustainable Energy Hawaii. So the three of us are trying to grow that community and spread the good word about geothermal. So what does that mean? It means, well, there's three main goals that we're really working towards in the short term. The first is really in support of Nicole and her scientific efforts. What's weird, as many of you might be aware, is that although everybody knows that we've got active volcanoes and the islands themselves are extinct volcanoes, and so of course there's a thermal resource below our feet. Nobody's done the studies to figure out, outside of a few particular locations on the Big Island, exactly what's down there. How deep is a thermal resource that might be usable? What temperature gradient is there? Is there water? All of these things. We know so little about our subsurface geology. And so goal one is to, and thank you for that link. Yes. I'll have actually a bunch of links that I'm going to post for everyone when I'm done speaking, for some further information. But we don't really know what's beneath our feet on the other islands. And so we're sitting here in this state in the midst of an energy transition that is in many ways ahead of other states in the US and other places in the world, totally reliant upon imports. And we're trying to replace those imports with other imports, essentially, that take up a lot of land. So, I mean, the biggest one that everybody's aware of is solar plus storage. And, our concern is that all of these things are going forward and all this development is taking place with other technologies, burning biodiesel, solar, when maybe there's a better answer right beneath our feet and we haven't even done the basic science to figure out if that's a viable option for us, which obviously the point is we really think it is. So trying to empower her and her team at UH and her organization, HGGRC, the Hawaii Groundwater and Geothermal Resources Center, to figure that out, publish it for all the world to see, and invite investors and developers and whomever else is willing to come and develop that resource and give us that energy that we have right here at home. So that's really goal number one. And then going along with that, just to figure out, is this possible? We've got to pave the way for that development that should take place afterwards. So that means local outreach, education, and advocacy, and industry engagement, and of course, regulatory reform. So we've got to make sure that it is easy, ideally, but at least possible to build these energy plants to once we figure out that this resource exists and is economical to utilize. So there's a lot to do, and time is really of the essence. I mean, that's, I think, if any point I want to convey the most, it's that there's urgency, because we're making massive investments in the last 10 years and in the next 10 years that will be our power generation portfolio for this generation and part of the next. And if we're making bad decisions, we're going to have to live with that for decades. So I hope that we can not miss that boat and make some good decisions in that route. And I hope that CCL can help to pave the way in making that possible. So maybe backing up just a little bit. What exactly is GR? So and then what is the rig, and what is our membership, and who are all these people that are interested? Well, it's very much a big tent approach, which just like this audience here, it's nonpartisan. It's just we're concerned about moving the cause forward. Everybody who's affiliated with this organization believes that this is probably the best answer to our energy problems. And we just want to spread the word about that and give geothermal the due attention that it deserves and has for some reason not gotten in the last several decades, and investment has gone elsewhere. And that's a trend that really needs to be reversed. So GR's official mission is to connect the geothermal community and champion geothermal energy in the US and around the world, quote unquote. And they didn't think that was enough. So there's also a vision statement with it, which is a brighter future for Earth and all its inhabitants, powered by the planet itself. And of course, I love that, although that's fairly universal when it comes to renewable energy in general. But I'm a firm believer that energy is prosperity. And just like I'm a foodie, I love to eat. Food and energy are exactly the same. We need them to live our lives and to feed our families. And every aspect of our life is touched by energy and the impacts that does or does not have around the environment around us. And we just firmly believe that this might be the best answer, especially in Hawaii, to those questions. So GR has membership from developers, from drilling companies, from scientists. Nicole is a board member. Basically, nonprofit, for-profit, government, you name it, all sectors. And the RIG membership, which Nicole, Peter, and I have managed to grow in the last just few months from just a handful of folks to over 100 people, is similarly diverse. So here in the state, we've got folks from companies like mine, engineers and business people. We've got folks from developers, investors. We've got people in the nonprofit sector. We've got folks from state energy office that are members and have attended some of our functions. We've got a bunch of folks from Hawaiian Electric, both retired and not, old guard, new guard, you name it. We've got a really great group of people with diverse interests, but a shared mission. They see the potential here, and they see that it seems like it's kind of an almost missed opportunity, and we need to rally around it as the stakeholders and maybe somewhat experts in this area in the state, and advocate for what we want, or we're going to get something different. As a matter of fact, just as a segue, so I should say, I'm not speaking today on behalf of my company. This is a personal project of mine that I'm just very interested in. Obviously, Burns and Mac is pro geothermal, but they're essentially technology agnostic, right? It's just an engineering company. We are employee owned, but we're engineers and we're taking care of our people. I personally just have a passion for this topic. But I will share a little bit professionally. And Laurel, yes, I absolutely will address that in just a second. I was sitting down with some folks in HECO's generation department just this afternoon. Actually, I just got home a few minutes before this meeting started. And I can tell you that even in that circle, which a lot of folks might think they're interested in preserving their old, they've got this aging fleet of oil burning, steam turbine based plants, and maybe they're not. You wouldn't think they'd be advocates. I can tell you they absolutely are, because they, more than anybody else, is seeing the need for firm power that's still there when the sun sets, when the wind doesn't blow. It's 100% dependable, always on. And I think we've got to engage with even the portions of the community who we don't necessarily agree with all the time, or don't necessarily share all viewpoints. You'd be surprised where advocates can come from, and that's how we're going to get things done here in the state. So, moving on to kind of the local situation. As I mentioned, the funding is the big one. We got to figure out what's down there, right? And we're actually making some progress on that. And Nicole's team has funding to drill at least one test well, and we're working on maybe a second. And we want to build on that in the next coming years. We need to drill a bunch of test wells on all of the islands to figure out what's possible. And there's just no way that outside investment is going to come without that data. Nobody's going to go on a wild goose chase figuring out how deep they need to drill in order to get what they need. So that's why ORMAT hasn't gone and built more PGVs, right? It's just not that simple. You gotta kind of clear the way. ORMAT really did pave the way, although they showed the challenges along the way. And community engagement, community concerns, the cultural issues. I think that we're seeing a sea change. And in the past, in this state, and I'm speaking as a newcomer, what I see is there was once a lot of opposition to geothermal technology and just generally new technologies. And because, unfortunately, PGV was built without all of that community buy-in that we recognize is absolutely essential today, it just took a long time to sort of get over that. And now I think people have become a little bit more energy literate about how much, first of all, the electric bills here are crazy high, right? So everybody notices. And then they're starting to notice a little bit more like what costs more, what costs less, why we should be thinking about other ideas and other options. And that's opened the door. It's opened minds, right? Unfortunately, that's always the way that it works, that when it hits your pocketbook, people start taking notice and thinking there's got to be another way. So I feel like we're at that tipping point where the public is receptive. And there have been surveys done, one recently by Ulupono, that reflect exactly that. So I think that traditional opposition is fading. And thank you for that. Yes, Puna Geothermal Venture, the plant over at the Kilauea Rift Zone. I think that we're at that point where if we just hold the conversation about, hey, there's this potential here or there, once we've identified, obviously, scientifically that these things are possible, that people will listen, and they won't just immediately shut you down and say, no, we can't do that here. We can't drill. It's disrespectful. It's this or that. I think that times have changed, and as long as it's approached in a collaborative way with whatever host community, that we can get over that. So that piece, I think, just with that continuing engagement, we can overcome that barrier. I don't see that as insurmountable at all. However, there is absolutely work to do on the governmental side, and this bleeds into so many other issues that we have here in the state. That permitting is just a mess. I mean, our regulatory framework in Hawaii is a mess, and unfortunately, that really it scares away outside investors. So, what does a developer or an investor or someone who wants to build a big project need? They need certainty, right, of their risk and of their return. And unfortunately, that's just very hard to come by right now. We have some frameworks in place that are, of course, different than everywhere else, which in and of itself is a problem. So that's one recommendation that I have just off the bat is that we really need to get our policies in line with other states that have been successful. There are paths not to follow. There are paths to follow. And if we're just reinventing the wheel here, then, you know, it's such a small market. People are going to say that's not worth that. It's not worth the squeeze. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? So we've got to get some alignment, and it doesn't even matter if the process is, you know, maybe as streamlined as it could be, as long as it's just similar to what these types of companies are facing in other places. So there's not that lack of familiarity. They know how to navigate. They can figure out what is the timeline. How am I going to get a project from start to finish, and be sure that I'm actually going to be able to do so, right? There's a litany of problems to building anything large here. Some of those are kind of fixable, and some aren't, right? I think what we need to do, there's so many sort of cards stacked against us to do things here. That makes it all the more important that we fix the things that we can fix. So, for example, logistics, construction cost, I can't change it, right? It's just, you know, you got a limited labor market. We're way out here far from everything. You're not going to be able to build things inexpensively. It's just not going to happen, right? So that's not going to be fixed. The lack of geological information, working on it, right? Can fix that. Community opposition, can fix that, right? Is being fixed, is changing. The regulations can get there. I think before we're going to really tackle the issues with the regulations, though, with permitting, and let me just say, I'm not a permitting expert. I'm not a developer either, right? Just an engineer. I build things. Somebody else decides where to build. I have seen that oftentimes our leaders, our political leaders, are not willing to stand up to a few loud detractors who are very savvy with social media or mainstream media, or just getting their voice out there and amplifying it. And those few people, more and more, they don't represent the public. They don't represent Hawaiians, but they're very good at making it seem like they're more impactful than they should be. And we need some courage from our leaders to stand up to those voices and then make those changes that, let's face it, are going to be requested by outside parties, right? The kinds of companies that are going to come and build geothermal energy plants here, aside from Ormat, they're not Hawaiian companies, and there's no getting around that, right? So they're easy to vilify. And we need leaders who see the overall benefit and are willing to stand up and defend them and say, this is something we have to have. Sorry, we don't have the expertise here in the state to just do it ourselves. We've got to bring them in. We've got to pave the way, facilitate, and we will get something that lasts 50, 75 years instead of 20 years for a set of solar panels and lithium batteries. So deal with talk with the leadership, really get across the opportunity here, get them willing to stand up to those few loud opposition voices and make the changes that we need in order to invite that outside interest. That's really, in a nutshell, I think the heaviest lift, but also the most impactful thing that can be done. Now, it's not all bad news, because there's actually a lot of support. And I think I know a lot of folks at the Hawaii State Energy Office. I'm sure a lot of you folks do as well. And I'm really encouraged when I talk to these people that they understand, or that at least they're beginning to understand, really the impacts of the choices that we're presented with right now, and that we need to make some big changes in order to make that work. And there are frameworks that exist. There's progress that has been made. So HSEO has a renewable energy permitting wizard on their website that walks you through the long list of permits and regulations that you must follow. And that is both an assistance to those who would dare to dream to build something. It's also kind of drawing attention to the onerous rules that must be followed, right? The processes that have to be followed. And what's kind of missing from that is the lack of schedule certainty that comes with trying to get all of these approvals, right? And in today's market, especially, I can tell you from working inside the industry, time is of the essence. Everything is so much more expensive just tomorrow. And so you stretch something out a month, a year, 2 years, and you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're never going to get anything done. You're always behind the gun at that point. So we got to streamline that and build upon that basis. Okay, we know what it takes right now. Let's try to squeeze that down and get it under control. So DLNR has mainly the jurisdiction over these types of projects, and they have a website actually devoted in their engineering division to geothermal. And I thought it's kind of interesting. On there they post their mission, and there's 4 points to this mission. And keep in mind when you're reading this, when you're hearing this, that there's only one geothermal plant in the state, and we've had it for 25 years, 20 years, somewhere in there. So it's a little bit funny to hear, but they have this big mission. It says preventing waste, conserving and providing for the optimum use of the geothermal resource, minimizing or preventing degradation of the environment, surface and groundwaters, and other natural resources, and prevent injury to life and property. Those are all wonderful, admirable goals, but I think we're really missing the forest for the trees in this case, because we're almost saying, hey, there's huge risks here. We got to put the brakes on and make sure that nobody's making a mess. And nobody's even done anything. In fact, nobody will do anything or has in the last how many decades, because the first instinct is to put up a barrier instead of to ask, how can we do this in a responsible way? So I think there needs to be a change in attitudes there. And again, going back to how our leaders approach this, that, hey, slow down, nothing like that has happened. And by the way, when we're comparing oil and gas exploration to geothermal, I appreciate the parallels that you could draw in terms of just kind of the technology and the expertise that's required. But let's not lose sight of the fact that when you're drilling for oil and gas, when you're extracting petroleum, that's a toxic product. And so when you spill it, it makes a big mess that has to be cleaned up. When you're drilling for a geothermal resource, it's nothing like that, right? You don't have any kind of these risks. I mean, there are toxic gases that will be released to some degree when you're developing a project like this, but it just is not at all comparable to the environmental risks that go along with oil and gas restriction. And so going back to what Paul said earlier, I appreciate that maybe as like a quiet internal goal, I like that we should at least aim for parity in a federal sense between oil and gas permissions and processes and geothermal. But what we should be asking for, to leave some room for negotiation, is preference. Because, I mean, come on, set the bar a little bit higher. These are not big risks to the environments where we're doing this drilling. It's just not at all the same thing. And the more that we're sort of putting the two on par, I think we might be kind of self-sabotaging potentially in that way, or sending a message that's not quite what we would like to send.
Hey, Kyle.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to address some of the questions that have been posed. I know you kind of addressed some of them, but would it be okay if I just post a few of those?
Absolutely. And let me say, I can ramble on for a long time, so just feel free. I love talking about this stuff. Let's.
So I'm just going to go backwards here. So Dave asked a question about the export of geothermal energy to Oahu. Obviously, for the other islands, the energy demand is minuscule compared to Oahu, right? And so the other challenge is that it may not be possible. It may be possible, it may not be possible for geothermal on Oahu. So if you have an excess of energy generated on Maui or Hawaii Island, what is the strategy for getting that energy to Oahu?
Great question. So inter-island transmission has been proposed in great detail multiple times in the past within the state. And to save us maybe 20 minutes of backstory, I will just say that it is wildly expensive to connect the islands with electrical cables. So I don't think that that's really ever going to be a viable option. To kind of emphasize the point about where the demand is, the difference is massive. Here on Oahu, the demand is somewhere around 1 gigawatt. On the other islands, it's a couple hundred megawatts. So it's just a fraction. We need the energy, the electrical energy here on Oahu. So there are potential sites on Oahu, and this is very, very preliminary, right? This is based upon surface study only, possibly 2 locations, right? One in the Ko'olaus along that old caldera zone, and the other one on the far side of the island at Waihine. So, is it there? We don't know until we drill. There is potential on Oahu, and I personally have a goal to answer that question as soon as possible. I think that is the easiest and most efficient path forward. That being said, if we can't build a geothermal energy plant on Oahu, we absolutely can build plants on other islands. Let's say we're limited to the island of Hawaii only. And what I would suggest to do with that energy is make hydrogen in some form. And you can transport that as it is, or you can make ammonia and transport that. And really use that as a base liquid fuel. And that can be a basis for all modes of transportation and energy. So the problem, of course, is in the conversion efficiency. It takes, in a nutshell, it just takes a massive amount of energy to make hydrogen. You lose a lot in the process. However, if you have a somewhat unlimited thermal resource that you can develop and utilize, then maybe that's not such a big deal, as opposed to covering mile upon mile with, say, PV cells or something of that nature.
Thank you, Kyle. We are actually needing to wrap up shortly. So what I'd like to offer is, if you're okay, if there are questions that people would like to reach out to you directly, is that possible? And how would they do that?
Absolutely. So there's a few ways that I would suggest to engage. One, I want to plug again. I think we have friends and advocates in the Hawaii State Energy Office, and you can contact them directly via their website, and I encourage that type of engagement. But for the various organizations that are working, that I'm working with to further these causes, you can reach out to me directly, and I'll provide my email and contact information that you can find that. You can go to our RIG webpage. So I think somebody on the chat posted the GR website. There is a site within that is just for the Hawaii RIG, And on that, you can find contact info for myself, for Peter, and for Nicole. You can also get involved with Peter's organization, Sustainable Energy Hawaii. You can find Nicole's organization, the Hawaii Groundwater and Geothermal Resources Center, HGGRC, which is underneath the University of Hawaii, at her website that I will post a link to. I encourage you to, if you can, join us at the upcoming conference in Waikoloa. There are two actually events going on simultaneously. There's the larger conference, which you do need to pay to register. And I'll be honest, it's a pretty high fee. There is also the Indigenous Symposium that they are hosting, and that is free to register to go to. Nicole is speaking at both of those. And all of the really important local voices, I shouldn't say all, many very important voices will be there, and you'll have the opportunity to meet with folks and talk story and hear more of what I've been talking about today.
Thanks, Keil. I'd like to turn it back over to Ashley, but before I do, I just want to make a comment on your commentary about the oil versus geothermal exploration. There's another angle to this, and I think it's a really important one. It doesn't apply here; it applies on the continent, and that is the IP, the intellectual property, the infrastructure, the people associated with the oil industry can be transitioned to geothermal. Right, the wells that they've dug, the technology for horizontal drilling, all of that is relevant to geothermal. So here's an opportunity to transform the oil and gas industry into an industry that's zero carbon, but it does take positioning, right? So there's a way to position this challenge between fossil and renewables, and this is one way to do that. Create the opportunity, the pathway for transition from for workforce transition, company transition, the economics of it shifting from oil to geothermal. Just wanted to comment on that. And Ashley, I know we have still a few slides to go through, and maybe we can just speed through them. Keil, mahalo again, and thanks for all you do.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Keil, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Cool. So let me go ahead and project my screen real quickly. We have a couple more slides to go through. I think we might go over a couple minutes, but hopefully you guys can stay with us. So for Hawaii updates and actions, we recently had National Drive Electric Week across all the islands. Noel, did you want to comment on this one?
Yeah, I'll do the 3 slides. So I just split it up so it makes more sense. Hawaii Drive Electric Week happened on October 5th. We had events across the state. CCL was invited. We had tabling at 2 events. And what you see there is the Maui event. And that's a celebration of clean transportation. And we try to table whenever we can at these events. Next slide, we have a postcarding activity. You see some of us, myself and Ruth there with the postcards that we generated. There were others as well involved, of course, Keith. And this was to support Washington's No on Initiative 2117, which was essentially a campaign to protect the state's landmark climate law. And then lastly, we had a brown bag over at the Hawaii Executive Collaborative. So a lot of business owners, business leaders rather, and industry leaders, members of Carbon Cashback joined that luncheon. We also had a virtual component where we had members from CCL Canada participate. And we also had Terry Lake, who's a former legislator involved in the establishment of carbon pricing in BC. So it was a very productive event, lots of good conversation. And back to you.
Great. For those of you new to CCL, we have a couple of different ways we go about making change. One is kind of grass tops, talking to executives or business people, leaders in the space. Grassroots was our tabling efforts, talking to just local EV owners or people interested in EVs in that case. And then leading up to lobbying, which is our actual meeting with representatives. So lots of different ways to get involved, which is why I really appreciate CCL. Another one is media relations. So Virginia, would you like to cover this one?
Sure. we've had several media publications in the last month, and we had one today in the Honolulu Star Advertiser you see on the far left, where John Kawamoto, in his very deft way, connected the tragedy of the hurricanes and how they are much larger due to climate change. He explained that, and then he went on to talk about carbon cashback, which would be a very effective solution to start to address the cause of climate change. So, and he got a really great positioning in the Star Advertiser, right at the top of their Views and Voices page. So we've had several other publications. Noel had a publication in Civil Beat about being ready for the next big hurricane and the importance of that. And then Helen, who's also on this call, had a letter published that shows the importance of reducing emission, but also dealing with the impacts that we're having now, and speaking about the organizations within the state that are working on those two goals. So we also do social media, and Jamin did a very effective social media about carbon cashback and how it would help low-income families because of the cashback aspect, where all the money that's collected from the fossil fuel companies bringing in fuel would be divided up equally among Hawaii residents. And that would benefit low-income families more because they tend to use less in the way of fossil fuels.
Thanks, Virginia. If you want to get involved with doing more social media for us or writing articles, definitely contact Virginia. We have lots of tools and training for writing letters to the editor through CCL. Doug, you're up next for our local carbon cashback focus.
Right. So carbon cashback is a little bit of an offshoot. As Noel mentioned, we had the Hawaii Executive Collaborative, where we have regular meetings with the HSCO and the Climate Commission, monthly meetings, as well as we've met in the past few months with the Climate Advisory Team, the Governor's Climate Advisory Team. So we've been focused on building coalitions with lower income community services and tax filing assistance, and then coalitions with other environmental groups. That's been our focus for the summer, and now we're moving into the pre-legislative season for the Hawaii state. And so we are, again, reaching out to legislators. We reached out to nearly 35, giving them the brief and lobbying with them last year, and we hope to do the same this year. So if you want to get involved in carbon cashback, there's plenty of ways to contribute.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. They have many regular meetings. If you'd like to join a specific branch, if you're interested in policy, interested in media, reach out to Doug to get more information. Let's see here. Next up, events. Noel?
Yeah, I'll make this quick. So big pitch for Hawaii Island folks. This weekend, I'm hosting Keil. It's an electric vehicle and sustainability fair at the mall in Hilo. We've got giveaways and lots of different groups involved in sustainability that will be participating in that event. And then, Paul, you have Climate Future Forum?
Yeah, so this is an event to help the youth get more involved in the legislative process and have their voices heard and help steer policies around the environment. Welcome folks who would like to be mentors to the youth. They're already starting to come up with policy ideas or what have you, but it's not too late to help out there. And then also groups that are interested can table from noon to 2:30. There's kind of a second part of the event, the Youth Climate Summit, in which we hope to have some of the youth from the Navahini settlement, some lawmakers, what have you, speaking. If you're interested, please let me know. I'll put my email in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Okay, so we have our climate action for this month from CCL is actually about voting. This is the national update, is go to vote.gov and register to vote or update your registration. We have a slide specific to Hawaii. If you're a registered voter already, you should be receiving your ballot by the 18th. I got mine today. Very exciting. And make sure you do your research. The election office of Hawaii actually has a view your ballot online. You can read all of the candidate statements, and you can access the PDF as well. We can send the link around. The PDF is statewide, so it's a little overwhelming, but they actually have all the details on any amendments. They explained in very plain language what voting yes or no means. So I thought that was super helpful. I know Virginia will always plug for the League of Women Voters. And Civil B, obviously, we all use as well to find out information about the candidates. So do your research, vote up and down the ballot, use your voting power. And I think that was it. So we did have some other bonus climate actions. Many of us are involved in election engagement locally. We also have our CCL Fall Conference coming up. And then quickly following, we'll have our fall lobbying days. So that's where we'll go talk to our national senators and representatives via Zoom, most likely. But yeah, invite your friend to join you for a fall conference and practice talking about the importance of voting. But thank you guys so much for joining. We really appreciate you all talking about geothermal with us tonight. And we'll send through the links and the recording and a PDF to the Luma invite. Noel, Paul, anything to add?
Thanks very much, Ashley, for leading. Great job. And thanks, awesome. Kyle, for the in-depth presentation on geothermal. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good evening. Take care. Aloha. Bye, Dave. Emma.
Thanks all. Bye. Thank you.
Have a good night's sleep, Dave.
I will do. Thank you. Bye.